Hey guys, welcome back to the first one of our sessions with a specialist guest today. I'm your host, Farrukh Ahmed, the corporate guy, the corporate trainer, productivity and optimization coach, and a podcaster focused on positivity, motivation, and inspiration. So let's go.
Hey everyone, my name is Zohair, and I'm an entrepreneur and a founder of a couple of companies based out of Dubai, an agency and something in the food space. I can't tell you what it is yet, and I'm very excited about our next guest, our first guest actually for today's show.
Hi, everybody. My name is Abe Seksek. I am a serial entrepreneur, ex corporate guy, currently heading up ventures at Rainmaking in the Middle East. And today we're talking about the burn, talking about controlling your burn with when it comes to money and money matters. We have a wonderful guest today, the wonderful Rasha, which I would like to pass off the mic to so she can introduce herself.
Hey everyone, this is Racha Ghamlouch. I'm really happy to be your first guest. It's awesome. I've been watching all the past 3 episodes and they're amazing. I run the Digital Digest, which is a daily broadcast with the top tech news, digital business news specifically in the region. And otherwise, I mentor startups at times and sometimes consult with mostly corporates on innovation and startups and how to engage innovation into their program and develop things further. And then complain about people burning money at other times.
Well, that's great. Well, let's dive right into it directly. So let's talk about this sensitive topic because I know we had an earlier discussion about the burn of money, but this also applies to obviously everybody, not only startups. It applies to SMEs. It applies to even corporates these days, and there's a special link to it, especially after these COVID times where people are extra careful with their, what they spend on. So give us your thoughts on that, Russia.
If you want to look at, I think this is something that's not necessarily just in the hard times right now. Since I've moved to Dubai specifically, I've seen startups splurge on the weirdest things. And there's times where, you meet this pre-launch startup and they have this beautiful office and you're like, how are you bankroll? Like, why is this in your cap table? Let's just start there. Like, I don't care how you're affording it. Why is it in your cap table? Why are you even doing this? Why is it necessary for you to have this Burj Khalifa view? Like, honestly, I don't get it. But also in my time, I've had multiple companies reach out to me to sell me services to reach startups or to propose services to startups where I'm like, so what is the cost of this? And I get quoted prices that, a corporate should be paying, not a startup. And they say, yeah, but the ROI is so high for this consultant that you have to do it. Well, it's so easy to be driven and tempted into this, especially as numbers are showing that increasingly entrepreneurs are in the 40s and their late 30s to 50s, and these are the most successful entrepreneurs and the most ones that make it. They've come from a corporate background and they're used to certain things. They want a PA. They want someone to delegate to. They want all these little perks and things to go on in their lives. And they want to maintain that corporate life in their startup life or their SME life. And it doesn't make financial sense. And they want to hire consultants and run surveys and do all these things. So I don't know if this is unique to the Middle East, though. I haven't had this experience with figuring it out with other parts of the world. I know there's some things we complain about as Middle East startups, do a lot. But then you talk to global community builders and they're like, oh yeah, we have the same problem all the time. Some problems are kind of universal. Others are very unique to the region. I don't want to say, well, maybe I don't want to say they are. I'm not sure, but they could be. I think there's a bunch of things. One is, I don't know why you're renting somewhere expensive try the cheapest rent you can get, and try to register as late as possible. Like, don't put the upfront cost before you have anything. Like, why are you registering your company and issuing a license before you have an MVP?
Yeah.
What's the point?
No,
Legally speaking,
I agree 100%. Like we used
legally
to tell
speaking,
that to
you
all of
don't
our
have to.
accelerators.
Yeah, like legally speaking, you don't have to. You're not selling anything. You're not transacting. You're not doing anything yet.
Yeah.
Push some buttons around. Do some things before. And MVP to product is a long path. So honestly, you gain a few months along the way, and you might get an angel that will foot that bill anyway.
Sure.
And go for the cheapest possible. Like, honestly, look what options you can register your company for cheap and do it. Registering in the GCC is not cheap. All subsidies included. Registering in the GCC is not cheap. Obviously, this is because you don't pay income, like you don't pay taxes on a lot of things, but you know, it's an upfront cost that might not be. You might not return anything on it. Your product doesn't make money yet. And like, you know, go for cheap, but also like you have a lot of free tools on the internet. Use your free tools, but use your free tools. Like, you have this service, go through the tutorials, do the demo, know the extent of it, and abuse the free service. Do not just have it there lying around and not use it. Like, it's such a waste of time and money to go spend money on something that you can have gotten for free and you can get away with. And there's also this notion that, and I think the past 5 weeks, I've said this at least 50 times. Do customer interviews. Don't do surveys. At MVP, yes, before product launch, just please go find your customer, sit them down, have a customer interview. Learn how to do a customer interview. Do it yourself as the CEO. Do not delegate this to some intern. And listen and take that feedback and build your product accordingly. And don't code before you need to code. Like, you really don't need to code for your MVP. It's just a paper wireframe is just as good. You know, you can do a lot of things for super cheap. There's hundreds of no-code tools out there that are free that you could use. And I say this because a lot of the times I meet startups that say, we have this amazing app and it does blah, 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 blah. And then 20 minutes later, I'm like, what do you do?
Can I see it? Can I see it? It's usually when you say, can I see it? They were like, well, we haven't built it yet.
And they're so distracted, you know, like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do this. I'm like, but does your customer want this? Like, it doesn't really matter what you think you want. You can build SpaceX for all that I care. If your customer doesn't want it, what are you solving for? I don't get it. And it's such a waste of time and money. Time is money, and you're paying some developer to do this for you, or you're spending your time doing this. And honestly, you could have spent the time building one feature and doing it well.
Sure.
And
I think as well as what you're saying, like, you know, by the way, you just gave advice for like $500,000, by the way, to a lot of the startups.
I'll put my PayPal link.
Yeah, exactly. Donate now. No, I agree with you. Like, and just to add to 2 points, what you're saying, like, I'm even helping right now a couple of my friends who own F&B businesses. I'm telling them the same like logic, you know, go out, don't hire a brand name to do a survey for you. Go talk to them yourself. Don't hire an intern. Tell what, you know, ask them what people feel about the brand, how the, like, even at a taste level, like a delivery method, like all of that, like like, and these guys never did that before, and they're in their late 40s, and they reach out back to me in a week saying, wow, what an enlightened virgin. Like, I spoke to like 10 customers and they told us about something. I might start this other brand that's under my brand, and I'm like, whoa, just that's not the point. The point is, yeah, exactly. And like, this is how you should refine that first product and not the other one. And funny enough, my first startup, my first big startup, real startup, we were in like one of our partners' father's office, sitting on a dining room. It wasn't even a conference table. I'm telling you, it was like one of these abandoned dining rooms that made it to the office. And I think the only reason why we liked that space is because we were next to the very, very like the best falafel place in Jordan at that time. So,
That's
and we would,
amazing.
so lunch was there for like a couple of weeks until we found out it was, we've had like we were all falafeled out. So, but we didn't pay rent for like I think 2 to 3 months, and we hired our first couple of people there. We were like a team of seven, I think, sitting on this table, and then we decided to get an office. And again, we didn't opt out for the something for the view, and so that is like I see that a lot. People say, I have to have a nice office to work in. Well, check out the last 3 months. You worked out of home, and you were very comfortable, and you were more productive than working in an office. So that is 100%. So tell me, Rasha, how do you feel about people hiring marketing and PR consultants?
To
Easy
do
there.
what? Where?
I know. I looked at you. I looked at you,
At
Zubair.
what
I'm like,
stage in their business now? So if you're just starting
Any
off,
stage.
I mean, look, there are certain stages you're at where you might not have the capacity to train and bring everyone in house, and or you might need somebody to come and evaluate or do something. But that's like not before Series A, you know.
no, no.
Like if you're, I do have a theory on this, and I think I use this sentence too much, which is everything you build till Series A as a structure of a company, you kind of need to chuck out and rebuild so that you can grow. Because Series A is when you're growing, and whatever you hack onto for you to get to this level is not going to serve you for growth. That
No.
being said, I'm not saying you should build like this amazing, everything is going to work miraculously from day one. You should hack it.
Scalable, yeah.
And just hack it at the beginning, do non-scalable things. And your code is going to be even patchy until you get to Series A. Series A is when you
Sure.
need to get hacked.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to do with the structure of your company as well. And that means at that stage, you might need some help with PR until you hire someone full-time. You might need
Yeah.
some help with some skills in marketing until you hire someone full-time, or evaluate if you need this full-time anyway. But at the same time, I think that the really interesting part is when you have these services that want to sell you 1 hour of consulting for 1,500 dirhams, and he's literally consulting you on business plans.
Yeah.
And I'm like, business canvas, download for free, watch a video on YouTube for free, learn how to do it for free.
Light beam.
Maybe buy the book, maybe buy the book. It's less than 100 dirhams. It's like maybe 90 dirhams at Kunikuniya. It's not, please don't spend money on this. And this, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was going to say, I think I mean, you touch on such a critical part, and being the service provider in question for this exactly, and I'll tell you what I tell a lot of these founders myself, and we've kind of learned ourselves as well. We need to be able to sustain ourselves before we get other people on board. But I think, and I hate to say it, but I think by and large, founders are generally pretty lazy. I can say this, I've been through the mill myself, but founders are generally just obscenely lazy, and they want other people to do the work for them. Free or paid becomes a separate matter, but I think a lot of them are like, how can I get someone else to do this for me so I don't have to do any of the thinking? And if I don't have to do any of the thinking, then that means I never had to do it, which means I never have to plan this anyway. So if I can get it for free, great. Cheapest chips, excellent. But if I have to pay for it, fine. I've got a little bit of money, I'll spend it. But I won't do a great job. So if they give me advice, I won't really follow all of it, just the stuff that makes sense to me. So, it's frustrating as well, because you're not doing justice to the business that you're trying to build. But because you're immediately straying away from bootstrapping and the principal idea of starting something with an MVP thought process, you're squandering the opportunity. And so, sorry to cut you, but I feel like it just had to be said,
Yeah, I
No, but
have
I
another
think there's,
perspective to it.
yeah.
Sorry, Rasha,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
intervene, but so coming from a corporate background, having tried my hands on a couple of startups, But there's something that I think that a lot of new startups and people actually get trapped into is the fact that actually the poorest person is not the one with less money but with more desires. That's the way I like to put it. And new startups, I think, adding to what Zuhair was saying, is sometimes startups think about, okay, I want to do this, let me do it the proper way the first time rather than going ping pong here and there.
Yeah.
And then they get into that circle of hiring people and consultants and all of that, and they want to be able to impress maybe their investors with a good setup, good office, or whatever. So what do you think about that? Because then that adds on, that's like a domino effect. You go down that rabbit hole and then you're never stopping.
I think it's I mean, there's part of it is, it depends on what you want to do at the end of the day. One is, you hopefully are not targeting the wrong kinds of investors that don't know how to do their due diligence. Does your investor care more about your office with a Burj Khalifa view, or do they really care more about the product and the mission you're on, and your vision for the company? And if it's down to the investor cares about both equally, I think you've already answered that this is not a good investor for you, because definitely the value of the product, regardless if you were in a warehouse in Al Quoz or Burj Khalifa view, should not be diminished. It should be the core of why you're raising money, or why someone is willing to invest in you or join your team or do anything. And I say this is like, when I joined the first company I worked for, actually my first two companies that I worked for, we worked out of apartments. And these apartments were like emptied out, and there were desks in them. And our neighbors were people living in their houses with, lunch being cooked at 1 p.m. and you could smell the onions coming in, and at some point in one of the companies, we upgraded to a nice office, and it came at a high cost. And at some point I stood there and I said, you know what? I wish we stayed in our crappy office and used that money to invest in this other part of the business, because that is more important to me than this nice office. I mean, the office is nice, I get it, but the product is why I come to work, not the view.
Well, COVID fixed that.
Well, yeah. I do have a Burj Khalifa view, except, it's
off
quite
of the mirror.
my Burj Khalifa view is this big.
Nice.
It's all
So
about perspective.
actually, you guys mentioned two really interesting topics that we would like to cover today as well. One is bootstrapping, and the other one is versus an investor. And is it a smart money or is it dumb money? You know what I mean? Those are two things I'd like us to touch on. Especially, I know I went through all three, I guess, but I'd like to hear your perspectives on them as well.
So I think there's this confusion that raising money is a success metric. This is number one. Raising money is just one of your strategies for growing your business. And I think this is kind of fueled by, and not just in the Middle East, but in all emerging markets, and I think even in developed markets, certain entrepreneurs, especially because of the way the media covers raising money and valuations, which we all know in some cases are, hot air balloons. Like, honestly, nobody knows how these valuations are being made at some point. And it is a free market model. So the more people want to pay for it, that's the value of the startup. And that's what we think it's going to get valued at. But it's not. Raising money is not a success metric. And this is the real thing that we need to talk about, which is in 2012, there was a lot of cool companies, 2010 and 11 in the Middle East, that managed to raise VC money, but they were not cut out for the VC track. And so they faded away, and they still exist today. They're profitable businesses. They're just never going to 10x. They're never going to 20x. Now we know this. Now we know that not every entrepreneur is cut out for the VC model, which is, if you're going to raise money from VCs need returns. And those returns need to be made in 7 to 10 years. You signed up for this. I'm not saying it's a bad track. It is a track. And you not complain when a VC hounds you to make that happen. They have their own LPs, they have their investors, they need to do returns. If you don't want that path, and that is not something that you want to sign up for, don't raise money. Make products that sell and sustain yourself. Figure out how to do a bootstrap model that allows you to get to a space where you can subsidize your operations from selling your product. Reasonably, that is a path where you're not going to buy a Rolls Royce day one. So also be realistic about your pricing, because obviously that's not going to happen. And there's, we look at Basecamp as the role models in that space. They like to dunk on VCs a lot. I know they've built some enemies on that space, but they've built a successful model that works. And there's others that have done that as well, like MailChimp and others. And they've exited eventually with 100% ownership. So, the ones that have exited with 100% ownership haven't made the big bucks, honestly.
Yeah, of course.
Because your other path is you raise money, you burn, and you go down that path, and you're very realistic and transparent that these investors should be your partners it's a marriage with this investor for the next 7 to 10 years to reach that 10x, 20x pivot, do everything it takes to make the right returns. And obviously, I'm not saying you should sell out your soul for it. Like, it's not, float or die. It's not, that's not the model, but this is the reality, and you shouldn't hate investors for it. The reason we're saying this is there is also the bad scenario where you are married to this investor and they're horrible for 7 to 10 years, or they're useless. And that's kind of your worst case scenario. So between bootstrapping, not even vultures. Vultures are probably even like, at least they're trying to do something. There's people that just take money from someone who never shows up. They never do anything for them. And that's like horrible, because entrepreneurship is difficult. It's exhausting. It's grueling. A mental strain. You need a partner in crime. You need someone to help you, to push you forward. And if you're just taking money from someone, take a loan, or I don't know, bootstrap. If it's between bad money, good money, and if it's between bad money or bootstrapping is probably healthier for your mentality and for your survival.
And your integrity, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, a good investor will save you a lot of money. One, a lot of investors have subsidized free services through their networks, even consultants, even mentors, advisors. They're able to do connections. They're able to do sales for you. They're open policy doors for you. Even product, they'll get you discounts on product. You're able to connect with their other successful portfolio members, and they're able to become your social network. That is, cheaper than therapy.
Definitely.
Good for your soul.
Exactly. And so, and this goes back to another thing, which is what I've seen also is sometimes you have smart money next to you, but you don't know how to ask, or you don't know you can ask. If you are funded by a successful VC who has had successful startups in their portfolio before, even if you're not aware of it, they probably have services that they can help you with. Ask them for it. And if it's not them, ask them to connect you with their other portfolio companies. There's no reason for them to say no. If there's other successful people in their portfolio, there's no reason for, obviously, if you're like really, really early on and you're asking for an intro to someone that's exited, be a little realistic about it. But use your VC, make their money, make them earn the money, the equity they put in your company.
Yeah. You gotta be really thoughtful about how that relationship develops, right? The whole point of any kind of relationship is that it adds value and gives value back somehow, or gets value back depending on the side that you're on. It sounds like, when you were describing this relationship, it sounds like you're talking about like just being a good dad, because I heard the other day that apparently 90% of being a good dad is just showing up. And I'm a new dad, so I'm figuring these things out. And a lot of these dynamics are actually not so alien to us in everyday life. It's just, I think we try and box them because we have these preconceived expectations, or we've read this article that says prescribed a certain way of dealing with relationships. But truth is that you're not getting in a relationship with an investor just because they're giving you a check, but they could be very involved in your business. Maybe that's what you need, maybe you don't need that, but kind of defining that perimeter and owning that relationship is such a core component of nurturing. And I mean, what investor would respect you if you didn't really have clarity yourself, so I think both sides get a bad rep, but that's probably because it's just poorly managed expectations. And
I agree. Like there's a lot of this. Like you said, like you said, a couple of really good points, Rasha and Zohair as well. Um, uh, I know a lot of entrepreneurs who have a lot of smart money around them, but A, are either shy to ask, or B, do not know how to ask, and that's something that's uh, you know lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur is, what's the worst case going to happen? If they say no, it's a no, right? So, but you need to ask. Nobody will assume, or nobody is going to go and put their neck out there. And then, you need to really ask. And that's something that is, I would say that's a lesson to all first time entrepreneurs. Ask, you have, what's the
And
worst
it's
thing
not
they say is
unfair.
no.
yeah,
It's
No,
not
no.
unfair for investors to ask you a million questions. At the end of the day, it's their money. So if you if you believe in your product, if you know about your customers, like you said earlier, if you've interviewed a couple of customers, I mean, a couple doesn't mean a couple dozen maybe, yeah, and you and you know what your product is, then I'm sure you'll be able to answer those questions.
Yeah, definitely.
and it's I go through I'm going through this whole dynamic of building relationships with investors, and I haven't raised any money successfully yet, but I've also found that the process is actually quite enlightening, because you discover as you go through the exercise that the kind of things that they ask you are often less to do with your ability to actually build a good business and whether you're even a good founder to invest in the first place, right? So that becomes like the first thought in their mind is like, I'm not asking these questions because I expect them to have the answers. No founder has that entire sort of skill set. They partner with people, they bring a co-founder on board to offset something, they engage somebody for free support, an investor will help you. That's the point of developing that knowledge, right? But that fear of taking that first step and not asking that question, for fear of rejection, and then what will others say,
Yeah.
you can spend your whole life going around in circles without making that first step. I did that. I was so scared of, because I was like, no, the MVP is not ready. No, the product document is not right. No, what will investors think? So afraid of shame. You have to fall a bunch of times until when you realize that, every time I get rejected, I'm actually much richer than the next person because I've
Yeah.
actually figured out something else that doesn't work. Um, it's so counterintuitive to be an entrepreneur. I find sometimes it's just like the opposite of good sense. All the stuff that we've taught. It's just everything is like you have to unlearn everything and be like, but that doesn't make any
Yep.
sense. That's the point. That's why you're going against the grain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think there's also something I want to hear everybody's thought about, because I deal with a lot of first time entrepreneurs, whether in tech or non. And when they say, "Could you help us find an investor?" and if the product's interesting, I do make a couple phone calls. But people like entrepreneurs sometimes are a bit naive as well, because a lot of times they think, oh, there's money out there, especially the ones that worked in investment banking. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars for people. They think, yeah, like for this product I can get $100,000, no problem. And then like people do not understand like any kind of relationship. Like nobody's ever gonna write you a check in the first time you sit with them. Actually, it happened once in my whole life, but that is like super 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 rare. um, an average relationship, for even if you have a business that is on fire and growing
Mm,
exponentially, uh,
right.
we're talking about 6 to 9 months. That's
Mm.
like on an easy sake up to a year, and people think, oh, I need money now. Well, you should have done it 6 months ago.
Invest in your product. Like, we're saying all this stuff about frugality, But the reason I want you to save all this money is